Don't waste your money on a new set of speakers. You get.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, how
How
are
are you? Happy
you?
Friday.
Happy Friday. I was just trying to type that in the chat. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm home from Vegas.
Friday, May 9th, meet up
Friday, May 9th.
259.
Jason, did you know it was my birthday last week?
Shh, I did not know it was your
Yeah,
birthday.
you didn't tell me happy
What
birthday.
is wrong with these dumb HR systems? Isn't that what the purpose of an HR system is? Is
You're
to tell you
actually
when
my manager. Didn't you get a notification in Workday?
I got nothing.
It was my
Oh, does
birthday.
that mean I'd
So
have to go into Workday? And
I don't have any idea how
we
it
shouldn't be
works,
talking about
but
vendors. Anyway, happy Friday, happy birthday.
thank you.
Hey, Alex, do you know that song we started with?
I did not know.
You don't know that song? Come
I mean,
on.
I like know the tune, but I couldn't tell you who sings it. Steve, I
Wow.
wasn't trying to call my boss out. I just want to be really clear. I was
Does
just
anyone
saying,
know that? Everyone knows that song. Yeah,
I,
she's younger. Thanks, Heidi. I,
I, what song is it?
I want, well, someone's gonna get it. Thank you, David. Billy Joel. It's Billy Joel. That was Billy Joel. Alex.
Okay, thank you for embarrassing me.
No, that's okay. Now, see, look at that. Lynn said, geez, Billy Joel. See? And Jess, Alex. Do you like how I said Jess? Sorry.
Yeah, well,
I'm just gonna
if
call
I'm
you Jess.
ever confused with anyone though, Jess Funbank is like my like I'd like to grow up to be her
Yes. So, why did I play Billy Joel?
because I don't know. I'm not gonna guess. I don't know. Now you're just embarrassing me, putting me on the spot.
Okay, you're doing a great job here, Alex. The it's Billy Joel's birthday today.
Oh, so you remember Billy Joel's birthday, but not mine?
Exactly. Now, can you guess how old Billy Joel is today?
No, but I'm pretty sure I could look it up on the internet really quickly.
Oh my gosh, come
He's
on.
76.
76 years old, three times Alex's age. Very
Are you
good.
gonna ask how old I am now?
I'm not. I'm not going to do that. So we've got Dorothy, Master, Steve, Bryce, Jess. Great to see everyone. Happy Friday. And so glad you're here. Alex is my co-host today,
I'm
as
not
my
sure I'm gonna come back after this one. I feel like it's hazing.
as, could be as my regular host or co-host, whichever one. I guess I would. She's probably the host. I'd be the co-host, right?
Mhm.
I just yeah, that's probably the right
Absolutely.
works, way it works. Is off running. I
She's
got a
running.
text from the host earlier this morning that said she found one bar. She's gonna walk up a hill and see if she can find more, but just in case, it got down to 42 degrees last night, a chilly sleep. Base camp is at 7,000 feet and will climb a fair bit. So I bought an oxygen canister to help me a little before I go out on my long leg. Sent out our first runner 30 minutes ago. We'll finish 30 hours or so from now. Tell the community happy Friday from Zion.
Wow. I think this is her, I think it's like 50 miles, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
She's
and
not
I think
running all of them. It's a team. It's a team.
does that mean you could do it?
I could do it. I mean, I like give me 10 steps of it and it's all good. Like she could run
How much?
49.99. I'll take the 10.
And this is her 13th, right?
Yes, exactly.
13th, yeah. She's impressive.
Yes. So we always like to start the community call with our green, yellow, red. How are you today? Green, great. Yellow, so.
Hell
Red,
yeah.
not so good. Please join in the chat and I will turn it to, oh, I got some green. Nice. We
Bright
got nice
green.
bright green. Started red, but turning green. Come on, Bryce, let's go. Embrace the crazy running thing. Impress the no. Wow, can't even read. Uh, Forget it. Parts of me are red, but that's just sunburn. Oh,
The rest is green. I love
I wonder
that.
if she wants to come on video to show off the sunburn. Steve Green, Stacy Green, James Green. Also, very cool. Alex, how are you?
Jason, I'm very green also. I had a wonderful week in person with everyone doing really cool things at Unleash in Vegas. And now I'm home with my kids and done some cool stuff already today. So I'm good. It's Mother's Day this weekend. I'm all around really good.
Good. Well, we are going to talk about a little bit about Unleash before we bring on our guest in a few minutes. I'm green too. I wonder if anyone can guess. I don't know why I do this. Can anyone guess why I'm green? Alex, can you guess why I'm green? Dorothy, that's a great question. We're going to talk about that in a second. I like that question.
What, if I can guess why you're green?
No, 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 no. Dorothy's question about the difference between US Unleash and European Unleash.
Oh, that is a good
Um,
question.
someone
Brian,
in someone in Minnesota can guess why I'm green.
is it nice out today?
Uh, well, it is really nice out. Yes, Timberwolves. Thank you.
It's a sports
Uh,
thing?
it is a sports thing. Yes, I was at the Timberwolves game last night. I had one heck of a time, and yes, it was a lot of fun. And before that, was at my son's baseball game, and got up. Oh, you know what
How
happened?
did you get home in time for
Oh,
this?
I have to tell you this story. So I think you've heard these stories, and I think I'm just a magnet for this stuff. When I got up at 3. I set my alarm for 3:30 in the morning Vegas time. Uh, because I had to leave at 4:15 to get to the airport by 4:45
We
a.m.
should have, I did the same thing. We should have shared.
Oh, I had no idea you did the same thing. Anyway,
We left, that's why we, yeah.
did you see anything interesting? Anything interesting at 4 a.m. in Vegas?
All of the other people coming home as I'm
Yes.
going out. Yeah,
It
I
is
felt
so crazy to me.
really,
Oh,
yeah,
I
it's
see it
Vegas.
every time and I always forget. And then I get in the elevator and then I'm with someone that's got so much cologne and so much booze and so
Yeah.
much weed
Yeah.
and
Well,
so
and you
little
can't get an Uber pickup anywhere because no one wants to pick up no one wants to pick up the party people.
and so few clothes on. Like all of that being said,
And
like
it was cold in Vegas this time. It was cold and rainy,
if
and they still
anyone
didn't have
ever
clothes
wants
on.
to just have a really fun time, well, I don't know if
Sit in
it's
the
fun.
bar.
For me, it's no, not sit in a bar.
In your hotel,
Get
like
up
sit in
and
the lobby and watch.
get up and be fully engaged for
Hmm.
your morning at 3:45, 4 in the morning, and then be like looking around. It is crazy.
Jason, have you ever heard of Daybreaker?
Daybreaker. No.
Daybreaker, yeah. So this is a thing that I mean, I lived in New York City almost 10 years ago, and it was a thing when I was there. They would do these things where the nightclubs would throw morning parties at 5 a.m. So you'd go on your way to work, you would go, and there'd be live music and dancing, and they would serve coffee and green juice. And it was all of the people who wanted to still have a good time, still love music, still love dancing, but didn't want to be out until 4 a.m., didn't want all the booze and all of that. And so you'd get up with everything, as you're saying, you'd be completely aware, completely capable, and you would go have your dance party with your coffee and your green juice, and then you'd go to work.
I have not, but I do have our show today sponsored by Gorilla Mind. Uh,
What is that?
Gorilla Mind? Oh my gosh, Gorilla Mind is my new favorite drink.
Read
Uh,
the ingredient list.
I'm not going to read it, but I've got unmatched energy, amplified focus, enhanced memory,
Read
increased
the
productivity,
what's in that?
elevated mental clarity, and no sugars and artificial colors. So,
Okay, I'm gonna read the ingredient list.
sponsored by Gorilla Mind.
What is in this?
Okay, moving on to our next one big thing. I would love to, it's not gummies in a can, Bryce. Come on, dude. One big thing. The next thing we do is what's your one big thing for the week? And I would love for you all to talk about one big thing you did, whether it be innovate, whether it be change someone's life, whether it be to get an organization out of stasis. There's a good word for all y'all to look up. Stasis. Would love to hear your one big thing in the chat. So please put it in the chat. We'll read some of them. And then, of course, Alex, I don't even know how prepared you are today for this, but what's your one big thing?
Extremely unprepared.
What's your one big thing? Well, that's good. You're just like Jess. Oh, what's the one big thing for the week?
That wasn't nice. From the last week,
No, from week 227.
I wasn't sure if you're talking about the upcoming week or the one that
No,
we
the
just had.
past
Okay.
week.
All right.
Do you never watch the show? You're not supposed to be a host on the show if you don't watch the show or listen to the show. We do the same thing every
Jason,
frickin' time.
I understand that, and yet one of your favorite things is often to mix things up and haze me. So I am just like coming into this fully expecting that you could do things differently. So, this last week, Jason, I feel like I did exactly that. I had a client come to me and say, "Hey, we really are ready for the future of HR. What does that look like?" And that's something that we've been talking about a lot at Mercer and building out. And so we kind of co-created that with a client this week and pushed us so far into what the future of HR should look like, completely blank slate, taking a step back from everything today. And it was incredible, and it was hard, and it was uncomfortable at times, and it was just the opposite of stasis.
That is really awesome. I love it. And I actually had an opportunity to be part of it. So I got to see some of it as well. And it truly was. It's a one big thing that's going to last for a while because it was a fun one big thing. It'll
Yeah.
go on, it'll live on, which is really rewarding.
Yeah. What about yours?
I want to read a few of these.
Oh,
Um, responded to a survey from my church about how it is doing and what that needs to change for future growth. Love
I
that.
like that.
Run a
I
workshop
like
on
that.
resisting Darvo tactics. Wow, you see, I don't know Darvo.
I don't know what Darvo tactics are.
We're gonna have to get the Darvo. You're gonna have
You
to
can
do
figure
the
this out.
look up Darvo. Exactly. Helped with an intervention 2 years
Oh,
ago. She was back in town and we had breakfast last week. She's thriving. Love that. Alex,
yes, I've looked up Darvo.
go ahead.
Uh, Darvo is an abusive tactic used by offenders, particularly in cases of sexual abuse or intimate partner violence, where they deny, attack, reverse roles of the victim and offender. And so it's a way to make sure that you're never a victim of, and your family members are not victims of abuse.
Oh my gosh, talk about that's a huge
A
thing.
huge thing and incredibly important.
Thank you so much. And in the workplace, Dorothy said. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dorothy. And I would love to attend the workshop. I need some information.
I
Um,
would as well.
I wonder if I have to go to Brussels, which you and I could go to Brussels together, Alex.
I would love that.
I love Lynn's at age 60, almost 67, sorry, started an AI certification class, not because I want a certificate, but to get more and more immersed. So it starts leaking into my pores or embodied, as I like to call it, Lynn. That's awesome. Stacy got scheduled for 2 interviews with 2 hiring managers and 2 great roles at 2 companies. Awesome.
Congratulations, Stacy.
And knowing Stacy, she's probably gonna get 2 jobs. And then it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens. Psych successfully migrated a client's RROP, Alex, it's acronym day, issue
Okay.
for a class action
Actively.
they're having. Um, love that. Stacy or Lori was nominated to audit a coaching tennis clinic at a local university in Chicago. At local university in Chicago, one of 5 people nominated. Awesome. Congratulations, Lori. Regular rate of pay. Very
Figured that
interesting.
out.
Yeah, cool. Tara helped Tara. Oh my God. Helped a client. So just so you know, I know Tara quite well, but I call her Coop. So I all of a sudden I'm like, oh shoot, how do you say her first name? Helped a client reevaluate academic requirements to create a more inclusive talent pipeline. Swung and missed at a new role, but learned so effing much along the way. No, he didn't say that. It would have been a large promotion. 100% happy with it. Swinging and missing is okay. I'm so glad that you said that. Thanks for sharing that. I'll share mine real quick. My one big thing, and my one big thing happened to be from a community member. Um, and excuse me, a different day, I got up very early in the morning to sit at a Starbucks to get some writing done and some work done. Actually, I have one big things. Um, and the first one is I ran into a community member who said she's never been on one of these live. but she listens to every single podcast. And she's like, I just had to say hi to you. Like, it was very interesting. She's like, I had to say hi to you. I was like, oh my God. I gave her a huge hug. And she's like, I listen to this every week. It's the thing that saves me every week from the normal, the mundane. Um, she called me funny, Alex, which is interesting.
That's
Um,
nice of her to be
but that,
kind to
that's
you.
not the one big that's not the one big thing, but she said it. But she basically said like this, she's been part of the community for probably 3 years of the 5 years
Wow.
that it's been going, and listens to it every week. And she said that she even has a group of people that get together on Sundays to listen to it together.
Wow.
So like almost like a watch party.
Wow.
Could you imagine? Like a watch party of this thing?
I mean, I can imagine it. Yeah. It's just
I,
like watching it live.
I think she needs something else to do. Um, no, I'm just kidding. And then the other thing that I just wanted to share, and I said some stuff last week. And I was like, one big thing. I love when people reach out to me, and someone reached out to me this week about some comments I made last week in one of the topics that we were talking about, and just said, there's multiple sides to everything. And there are times that, Alex, you know this very well for as long as we work together, that I might get overly passionate about things. And as I try to teach my sons to listen carefully before you just respond, and someone reached out to me and said that they didn't think I necessarily was that last week, that I wasn't taking both sides of the story or the topic, and I probably could have handled it better. So that's really big to me because I fancy myself as someone who's always trying to learn and to do better at things. So for that person that reached out, I really, really appreciate you doing it, because it helps me realize how I am, and hopefully makes me a better person going forward. So those are my two OBTs.
Jason, on that, I think that a lot of us go through that moment at different points in our lives where we put our foot in it or we just don't know enough to even understand that there might be two sides to the coin. Now, getting feedback on it is rare, that you have a community that cares enough about you to reach out and have the hard conversation. But even more rare is being brave enough to continue trying. And I think that that's the one big thing is coming back and saying, I know I'm going to do it again because I'm putting my opinions out there. And I think a lot of people have just taken to shutting down. They don't share their opinions. They don't have the tough conversations. They don't say it because they're scared of saying the wrong thing. And it's not positive when we do that. It's better to take a risk and to be open. It looks
Yeah,
like
no,
Leah raised her hand.
it's a good point. I try really hard to well, I'm very passionate about many things in life, and most of them we talk about on here. So, but at the same time, Alex, you oftentimes talk about putting yourself in the empty chair. And how do you put yourself in an empty chair and think about how some others might feel? And in that particular case, I probably didn't do as well of a job as I should have. So um, I'm not going to stop being passionate. I'm not going to stop driving. I apologize sometimes if I do go too far, and I don't mean to make anyone uncomfortable. I try to move us forward as a human group.
Jason, it looks like Leah Joyner raised her hand and I wasn't sure if she wanted to. Oh, come on. I thought you were going to come on and say hi and had something to add to that. But okay, we won't put you on the spot.
Leia, it's all good. You can raise your hand every time. It's just good to see you. Good to see that she just, I mean, I don't know if you know Leia very well, Alex,
I
but
don't. I clearly mispronounced her name, unlike Tara, who you talk to every day and still
yeah,
miss.
well, Leia just likes attention. So that's why she raised her hand, just to get attention. So it's all good. Um, so
We
Alex,
just talked about you not saying things.
yeah, and then what do I do?
You go
Uh,
make fun of someone.
Yeah, exactly. From Unleash standpoint, so Unleash, Dorothy asked the question a little bit ago, Unleash Europe and Unleash US. Unleash US is just a smaller version of Unleash Europe, I would say. Same great content, same uh interactive learning opportunities, same lots of vendors, but everything is just a little bit smaller. Now, for Mark Coleman, who runs Unleash, I apologize if it's not smaller, because it might not be smaller, but it just feels smaller. It feels more intimate. And when I say smaller, smaller is good in this case. It feels more intimate. It feels like more contained. The master said it's about a third of the size. Thank you. It feels more contained. And actually, I have to say that it feels like you can have more meaningful conversations because of its size. So, Dorothy, I'd say that's the only, well, excuse me. And it's in a crazy place called Las Vegas, which is not my favorite place in the world, compared to where Unleash World is. So, I'd say those are the biggest differences. If anyone else has been to both, I'd love to have you chime in. But I'd say those are the biggest differences. But Alex, maybe I can start with something about Unleash that I found really interesting this time, and then if you want to jump in with anything, that would be great. I think, and I've said this before, and I was really encouraged by this. I think that there are more people than I've ever talked to that want to be out of HR. And when I say out of HR, I don't mean that they want to change professions, but they truly feel that there's a need to focus on humanity, to focus on the impact of humans and machines together, that need to focus on the concept of wellness, not being just health wellness, but financial wellness. Uh, I I got a big feeling of humanity at this event that I haven't had. And there were still the vendors there talking about features, but I got a bigger sense of humanity. In fact, I mean, full disclosure, and I saw it on LinkedIn earlier, actually. I went to Mark Coleman, who runs Unleash and is the founder of Unleash. And I said, the way that Unleash marketed itself, I don't know if you saw it, Alex, was the International Festival of HR.
Yeah.
And I said, Mark, if I were you, I would go right now, buy some spray paint, and just cross out HR
Yeah.
on your big banner and put humans or put humanity. Because that's how I felt at this event. So I just wanted to share that. I mean, there was still Josh Burson talking about features and functions and who's partnering with who and all this other stuff, and all fine. But I think the bigger thing was the why. The bigger thing was the why. That was what my big takeaway.
Yeah. I think I don't know if that was intentional or not. But I will say, even just from being at Unleash, it actually felt more human this year. So I don't know if anyone was there who noticed the music was quieter this year. Right? They opened this space up. There was an outdoor space with place to be together as a community that wasn't just a session. It wasn't just the expo floor. They made a really important shift towards community over the experience of the conference itself. And it was incredible to me to have that space exactly. It was too loud before, just to be kind of honest. But I will say this year was so different. I had so many meaningful conversations in spaces that weren't available last year, same venue, right? But weren't available last year. And it really felt more like that community. Oh my gosh, he did it. This is so great.
He did it. He posted it 16 hours ago. So I said this to him along with Jess
Yeah.
for judging the startup competition, and he actually did it.
Is that AI generated, or do you think it's real life?
I don't know. I was thinking about
I
that.
mean, his handwriting is really, really good, if that is. Mine would look like this. It'd be like dragging down the slide, like who's that good at spray painting? It's just, you think this is AI generated?
I don't know, but
I want to know the answer to that.
when I saw it when I woke up this morning, I got, as you can see, I was the first one to comment. I was like very excited about it.
That's amazing. I love it. And I think that's really important. Jason, you and I talk a lot right now about what is the future of HR? Will there be an HR organization? Is this something that's happening? And I think I've always valued Unleash so much because they focus on bringing non-HR voices in. I was telling a client that this morning. I was saying of all the conferences that I had to pick from, I love that it's not just HR leaders, HR professionals. It's, bringing that external voice in. And I think that's why it pushes us forward. And I love that they're listening to that too and now creating more space for that community.
And there's one more thing while we bring on our guest today, because we've talked a lot.
Whoops.
Yes, exactly. We've talked a lot. Jess and I were able to judge the startup competition this year. Oh, excuse me, not judge. We did judge, but we also moderated on stage. And I just have to say, to entrepreneurs out there everywhere, it takes a lot of guts to start a company and be a builder. B, it takes double the guts to get up in front of a group of 1,000 people and present it. And 3, it takes a lot of guts to not win and then go back and keep building. So I just have to say, for everyone that took part of that event, like, kudos to you, because it's not easy. It's not easy to build. And I just think you all deserve a ton of, if anyone's listening that's been part of that, I just think you deserve a ton of credit for putting yourself out there and working to make the world a better place.
Yeah. And to those who did win, Master, who's here today, congratulations on that as well. It's so much work.
I love what Zach said. Everyone is a critic. Everyone has an opinion, and 99.9 of them are not going to get off their lazy to do anything about it. So for those people that are, it's awesome.
Jason.
Oriana. Oh, go ahead.
So we're going to introduce Oriana, but I want to intro this in a really fascinating way, because what we've struggled with so much at HR conferences in the past is when technology is promoted as technology, not as a solution. And we're going to talk about FemTech today, which is, in my opinion, just like the best use of technology to drive humanity, and something that everyone listening today needs to learn about. When we think about HR solutions and technology solutions overall, it's about how it drives more humanity. And I'm so excited to get to talk to you today and learn more about that.
Thanks for having me. I feel like Jason, maybe have you heard of FemTech before?
I have, yes, but I wanted to
Jason
make
had
sure.
to do a little research.
No. I wanted to make sure, Oriana, I wanted to make sure everyone heard it, because I think I mean, when we got in here, HR tech, we should stop calling it HR, human tech, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then Alex just threw out femtech. So maybe as an intro, Oriana, you could introduce yourself and talk about that space and kind of what it means. It should be self-explanatory, but going forward, how do you see it changing?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm Oriana. I run a company called FemTechnology. And I mean, for me, some people might not know what FemTech is. I know a couple of years back, people kept thinking I was talking about FinTech. And so FemTech is yeah.
Exact opposite.
This is much more important than fintech. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. This is a different category than fintech.
Yeah, so femtech is technological solutions for women's health. And I think some people maybe when they think of that, they think of maybe like period tracking apps, which is definitely a part of it, but it's much more expansive. It's everything from solutions for menopause, osteoporosis, pelvic floor dysfunction, differences in cardiovascular disease. I started this while I was in medical school, because I kind of naively went in with kind of like two assumptions. One was that men and women were getting equal care when it came to the medical system, which turns out to be very much not the case. And then the second was I actually didn't know this, but there are sex differences in every single cell in the human body, which means that basically the way all diseases manifest are different between men and women, which means that we should be using different, kind of diagnostic tools, different treatment options, but we don't. We treat women like little men basically, and yeah, they are not. So
I love that, Oriana. So med school, right?
yeah.
Where were you?
In Switzerland, at ETH Zurich, it's an engineering school. So, yeah, they wanted to like design a future generation of doctors to be, be able to code, have some mechanical engineering, that kind of stuff. And yeah.
So I just have to say how much I love that. I knew the answer to that, but I wanted to hear you say it, which is great. And then the second thing I would love to hear you talk about is what was the, so I love sparks. Like spark is a big word to me. It's a big thing I live my life off of are sparks. But like, what was the spark where besides what you just said, the one thing where you're like, man, like I'm onto something, or I'm really bothered that there's not something more to help or work with me personally.
Yeah, totally. Well, so the first time I ever heard about conditions like endometriosis or PCOS, which impact 10% of the female population respectively, was literally in gynecology class in medical school, which bothered me for a variety of reasons. One was if I had one of these conditions, like it's not normal that if they impact that amount of people that you learn about them for the first time in medical school, because as a frame of reference, right, diabetes and endometriosis impact the same amount of people, but everybody's heard of diabetes, whereas until a couple of years ago not everybody had heard of endometriosis. And then you spend like 4 weeks on diabetes in medical school, and then you spend 45 minutes on endometriosis, which is part of the reason it takes on average 7.5 years to get diagnosed with endometriosis. That's part of it. And then the other part of it is that like a lot of these conditions when it comes to women's health have really been left in kind of the Middle Ages. So we were in this school that really, we were playing with robots, right? Learning to code. It was very like futuristic. But when it came, to endometriosis, it was like we have no effective diagnostics, no effective therapeutics. Moving on, and I was like, what? Like that didn't sit right with me because statistically, it's very likely I'll experience a multitude of these conditions across my life, but we don't have the tools to do anything about it. And so I thought like, surely there must be more out there than what we're learning about. And so I started seeing what existed in terms of innovation in women's health. And then as my thesis in medical school, I organized this thing called FemTechnology Summit, which brings together femtech startups, researchers, clinicians, and corporates for a 360-degree perspective on innovation in women's health to really understand, what was going on in the space.
Wow. So have you encountered a lot of others that are following this same passion to try and create more focus on women's health?
Yeah, more and more. I mean, now in universities there are programs, with a focus on sex and gender differences in medical school. There, I feel like there are like femtech clubs at every major university now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think like I kind of like I was joking a little bit, but I mean, really, 4 years back, everybody thought I was talking about fintech, and now I think everybody has heard of femtech, right? So there has been in like the last 4 years, like this like exponential growth curve, and I think, yeah, hopefully it continues.
So Ariana, a question around this, um, because it's something that I haven't thought of, um, and it's going to, it might be, well, it's not dangerous. Why? So, when I go through when I go through these types of things where I learn things, I'm always like, why did it take so long? And then all of a sudden I get down dangerous rabbit holes and I see the famed Torrin Ellison, who could answer my question in some sort of a major sermon. But why did it take so long? Is it because of the treatment of women and how women were seen as less important than men for so long? Why did it take why do you have 4 weeks of training on diabetes? You know, compared to these other things.
I mean, I think like everything, it's like multifactorial, right? I mean, one of it is, women weren't in the workforce and women weren't like physicians and researchers. So, okay, maybe like zooming out, I'll give like an example that probably encapsulates this very well. So, um, I think I can talk about Viagra. I'm hoping whatever.
You can talk about whatever you want.
So basically, when researchers were first researching sildenafil, which is like the compound for Viagra, they were researching it for its implications for cardiovascular disease, right? Like that they thought it was a treatment option for that. While they were researching that, they found it had like two very interesting applications. One was for erectile dysfunction, right? And we know it later goes on to become Viagra. But the other was for premenstrual cramps, right? So for cramps and for pain. Now, for reference, erectile dysfunction impacts 19% of men, and menstrual cramps impact around like 90% of women. But the researchers thought that there was no, the market size for cramps wasn't large enough. So it would not be an interesting application and therapeutic avenue to pursue. And so then they went in the direction of like what we now have for Viagra, and researchers who've been now trying in the last couple of years since it's come to light to get like the funding to like develop that and research it for cramps, they having a very difficult time getting funding and
I
not
mean,
able
do
to
you
do that.
understand how like all of us would pay for that?
But I mean, yes, I agree. But like, and so that's, I think, just like a very obvious example of like, if you're not, if the problem doesn't apply to you, it won't necessarily occur to you. You don't think that the market size is there. Like, you're not going to like research and pursue that avenue. That was, I think, one thing, right? Because women were like excluded. And others, there's, you know, medicine is not exempt from sexism, right? And so there's all these narratives about women being so much more complicated, right? Like, it doesn't work for like two reasons. One is, okay, even if women were more complicated, there's still 51% of the population. You still have to treat the more complicated people. And the other is this narrative of like women are harder to study because of hormonal variations with the menstrual cycle is actually not true. It's actually would be easier to study. So that because it's more predictable, it's a pattern versus like men, when they get testosterone surges, it's more erratic. You don't know when it's going to surge or not, right? So you'd rather have the pattern that's predictable than the surge, but there's all these narratives. And yeah, those would be my two main reasons. I think there's like untrue narratives and just women were excluded. And then now the problem is women have not been historically in positions to allocate capital. So if you're not giving the money, you can't do the research, you can't do the work, you can't have the application. And there's really this like negative feedback loop because there's a lot of the basic fundamental research that hasn't been funded. There are even charts that show that diseases that disproportionately impact men get way more funding than diseases that disproportionately impact women. And so we just don't have the knowledge that we need to develop the solutions that need to be developed.
So when you think about the AI, if I could, and what you're watching happen with AI in this space, do you and so much work is being done, as you know, around AI. Katie said this whole thing makes her so mad. And you see how much money is being poured into AI right now. Is it still following that same historical path, or do you see that you and others have made an impact now where I'm not going to say we're getting close to equity because I'm sure we're not close, but where you've seen it shift?
So I think that I think AI is a huge opportunity. I think that there's a big problem that we're not necessarily talking about, which is just that women are largely excluded from these like data sets, right? So if you let's go back to endometriosis, right? Take first of all, for women's health conditions, for every like 5 women that would be impacted by one of these women's health conditions, only one gets diagnosed. So you have like 4 of these things are not showing up in electronic health records to like the prevalence that they're actually occurring in the population. And that's only
why
okay.
is that? Why is that? Can you sorry.
Yeah. So
why is
so
that?
that because doctors are just not coming back to like the medical education thing and not having the diagnostic tools. They're not trained to recognize these conditions. And
Okay.
so for endometriosis specifically, right, like 7.5 years to get diagnosed, and you on average see 5 providers before you're getting that diagnosis. And so even if you do get the diagnosis at the end, that's 4 times it's showing up in an EHR incorrectly, right? So there's a lot of like incorrect data out there and misdiagnoses. Women are 20 to 30% more likely to be misdiagnosed than men. And so that's a problem.
Yeah,
like we just
crazy.
And
yeah,
to bring this home for you, Jason, just for context. So I am 36. We all just talked about celebrating my birthday. I have had 2 children. I'm highly educated. I have a master's degree. I have obviously a relatively stable income. I have lived in very like rational, like large cities. I was diagnosed with chronic endometritis after my 2nd pregnancy months ago. I obviously have gotten good like medical care my entire life for the most part, aside from New York City and being in college. And I've again had 2 children, seen countless experts, and was diagnosed at 36.
Wow.
Sorry.
And
Yeah.
no, I mean but this is exactly the conversation for today is you know, you think it doesn't happen or it happens in these other realms, but to your point, I have had incredible access and great doctors, and they are just not trained or qualified because of it's not their fault, right? It's the background, it's the system, it's the screening tools, it's the research, it's the medication put into it.
No, 100%. And unfortunately, so I mean, you asked me if this was kind of changing, right? And I'm like saying, well, it's exciting that it, you know, there's all these femtech clubs and all that, but like I wasn't in medical school that long ago, right? And it hadn't changed. And when they were, you know, educating doctors on like how heart attacks manifest, they were still training them on male symptoms, right? And putting as like an asterisk that females manifest differently. And so it's problem because all the doctors that are kind of like on the market today were trained with this old knowledge, and even the future generations of doctors that haven't been revamped. So on the other hand, you know, it's an opportunity because I do think artificial intelligence is going to radically transform the way medical care is practiced. And if you could, you know, use the correct knowledge, right, and this information and deploy that at scale, that would be an opportunity to close the gap. So it's like a dual-edged sword, but I just don't know if people are thinking about it in the way that they need to be thinking about it, right, in terms of like the existing biases and like, are you looking at the data sets and thinking about these things?
So I think I know this answer, but I maybe don't. Um, with what our government in the US is doing right now in defunding a lot of universities that do research and things like that, um, do you think this gets worse before it gets better? Do you think that has no impact on that? Like, or have you seen anything or heard anything feet on the street based on some of these changes going on, or even within the United States, are, you know, health and human services leads that are changing anything?
Well, not have to be too depressing, but like with the National Science Foundation, for example, like uh people who've applied for grants that had the term woman in it or like women's health, like that was a banned word. Like just studying women specifically or female is banned. So
Is that
I think that's
that's recently?
yeah,
But
yeah, this was like a month ago or so. Yeah.
there was a list of
So
like 160 terms that were all used to evaluate which grants would be paused, and anything women's was along with anything else, equity, inclusion,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
minority
Oh, dumb.
representation.
So really dumb
But
question on my part. Sorry.
no, well, not dumb, but I mean, I think maybe this goes without saying, but so women was banned, but you could have men specifically, and that was not banned. So it was not a question of like only studying one group was wrong. It was you could specifically only study men. You just could not only specifically study women.
I'll ask Jason's question in a different way then. I actually believe that most people have only learned about period tracking since we've talked about don't do it anymore. And we're talking about not doing it anymore because as abortions become criminalized, you can actually, there's Facebook, for example, and others, there's a situation in Texas where a young woman sent a message about getting an abortion in Facebook, and that message was accessed and then used to prosecute her in her abortion case. There's similar speculation that period tracking data could be used as well. When these apps recognize you're no longer getting your period, they're able to recognize that you're pregnant and then potentially recognize that you didn't have a child on the other side of it. And so period tracking has become more well known because of the political landscape. On the flip side of this, there's currently a national conversation around having more children. And if you put aside politics, you just put aside politics, there is obviously something to be said about being in a country with a declining birth rate, right? It'll flip our, you know, any sort of retirement funds, Social Security, et cetera. There's an impact. And so if you look at the world and you talk about how do we make the world more safe, more capable for women to have more children? In my opinion, femtech, you know, endometriosis has one of the biggest impacts on infertility in the world, right? What we're talking about, if it's difficult to have more children because you can't get diagnosed about something that's preventing you from having children, it's going to be difficult. And then you talk about issues with, IVF and embryos and a lot of the legal elements around that. And so it's interesting because at the center of this political landscape, there is women's health in a way that it hasn't been in the past. Maybe not for all the right reasons. Maybe there's a lot of political narrative around it, but I think it's actually getting more attention right now than it has for years in the past. So I'd love to know from you, Oriana, if there's a message about how do we just create more focus on women's health as part of this world, what do you want everyone on this call to take away from today? And how do we capitalize on the narrative that's going on right now?
Around women's health as it relates to fertility, or sort of more broadly?
I think as it relates to fertility is the best. It's happening right now. And so how do we take advantage of that conversation to say, hey, in my opinion, what I want to raise my hand for, I have a 7-month-old and a 3.5-year-old. I want to raise my hand and talk about, help me with childcare. You want me to have more kids? I pay an insane amount of money a month for childcare. I have, the hours are before I wrap up with work. It's incredibly difficult to get in. And so when you think about women's health and access and decision making and all of that, what can we do to just capitalize on this narrative, the fact that it is at least part of the conversation? How do we bring it to life that there isn't enough focus on women in everything related to women's health? How do we bring it up?
I think there's probably like 2, 3 things. So one, the thing, it's what you mentioned, right? Endometriosis, PCOS, these are like the leading causes of infertility, right? And it gets so much more expensive to treat, and there's a huge access barrier and capital. And so if you just treated women's health earlier on, you'd solve a lot of those issues. Also though, right? Infertility is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So it's 1/3 women, but also 1/3 men, and 1/3 just you're kind of biologically not incompatible, but you're having issues, the two of you together, right? I don't know that the whole focus should be on women, which it kind of is, and
Oh,
is
that's
a bit
fascinating. Yeah.
is a bit unfair. I think the other thing though, I would more put the emphasis for women's health in terms of the impact on the workplace. I think that's starting to get a lot of attention as it relates now to menopause, especially. But these issues, like we did a survey of 1,000 women across 42 countries and found that 70% of women have lost between 1 to 5 days of productivity due to women's health issues in the last month alone. So that's between
Wow.
12 to 60 days a year. That's a lot of money being left
That's
on the table,
wow.
yeah, for both women and for the employer. And so I also, just because not every woman wants to have kids, I don't know that I personally
Absolutely.
would place
Yeah.
the
No, I'm completely with
yeah,
you. I
yeah,
just
yeah,
want to take
yeah,
advantage of the conversation to
right.
promote the things that we need to have focus on.
No, and I agree. I think you have to be tactically intelligent, but I think like the economic impact is huge, right?
Yeah.
That's so much money being left on the table, and a lot of like very expensive medication like GLP-1s, women are the predominant users of those medications. So if like employers are looking to drive down costs, that's another way of looking at it. If you better supported women's health upstream, you'd be saving so much money downstream, whether it's fertility, whether it's the workplace, whatever it is. That's kind of how I would frame it.
So, Oriana,
Absolutely.
there's a great question from Dorothy in the chat, and I find the whole how you went to school and what you did really fascinating around medicine and data. I'm just going that sorry, that was me dumbing it down. Sorry, medicine and data. But like I when Dorothy asked, and Dorothy's from outside the United States, are you scared in the US of your data being compromised? It's a really interesting topic when it comes to medicine, not just in this topic, but in general. And I've never really talked to anyone about this. But, as someone who's wearing a Whoop band on one wrist and a Apple Watch on another wrist, and, your AirPods that you're wearing now are going to take your blood pressure starting in the next release, et cetera, et cetera. Like, where does your head fall when it comes? Sorry, it's a little bit of a switch of topic, but I hope it's relevant. Where does your, if we go back to women's issues, these same apps will allow you to track your menstrual cycles and put them online in these apps, and then who has access to that data? So are you worried? Should people be worried about that? Are you worried about that? Or do you actually think it's going to help us all? going forward?
I mean, I think it depends on who kind of has access to your data, right? I'm a big fan of like the promise of having more data as it relates to health. I think right now it's super siloed, right? Doctors can't even communicate with each other. It's a huge missed opportunity, right? Like we're seeing cases of people using like their Aura rings to be able to predict autoimmune flare-ups. I think that's like amazing. That's
Yep.
incredible, right?
Yeah.
I think, but on the flip side, I think that there is a history, particularly in this country, of healthcare and employment in a way that there's not necessarily in other countries around the world, and how that could be weaponized. So I do think it matters who has access to your data, right, and how that confidentiality will be maintained. I think like wearable tech being integrated into medical care is seems amazing to me, right? And I think we'd all love to not have to go to the doctor as frequently and be able to take our measurements like kind of remotely. But yeah, I don't know how you feel about it. Do you guys think about giving your data away to wearables? Like, are you
You
scared at
know, it's
all?
real. I mean, thank you for asking the question back. It's a really, Tiana just basically, I feel just like Tiana just put in the chat. She said, I've personally gotten over that part as I feel like we've already been, I don't necessarily think, I mean, compromised is the word I would use, but it seems to be out of our control, but I could be wrong. Um, so for me, I feel like the data is helping me. So, for example, this Whoop band has, Whoop sponsor. No, just kidding. But I share with Jess quite a bit that myself and my two sons, are in a group community together where I never win the workout competition, or the sleep competition that over them, but it's not only it has encouraged me to become more healthy in A, trying to keep up with them, but B, just having visibility into how unhealthy I was. I think on the last call, I talked about how I hadn't taken steps, and just being able to see that is really important. Now, I know my data is somewhere, but I'm like, do I really care that someone knows how many steps I took today? Do I
Well,
really
so
go ahead?
I mean, so I mean, I think yeah, I think your point is like an interesting one about what is the type of data, because there was a story about a period tracking app. I mean, coming back to that, selling data to Facebook that then got used to target women for fertility
Uh,
ads, and so like then you do care, right? Like, or you're having a miscarriage and you're getting targeted, right? Like, so what is the sensitive nature of data? And I think, you know, even kind of your steps could be weaponized. So I mean, it is
Well, I mean, I
it
don't
is
think you know
like
what I don't know what Katie just said. She said she finds comfort in anonymity. Like they likely won't pick on me.
Well,
Uh,
and I think that's the key though, is what risk do you have? That's the key. Is it's your degree of risk. There was an article over the weekend actually about um like a cold murder case from I think it was like 1990 something, and the police office, whatever district, had been going through cases to say, hey, let's assess them to see if there's anything we can do, and they actually ran DNA from the scene against 23andMe. And what they found was a matching surname to someone who had been identified in the network of individuals, and then went on to be able to actually charge the man who pled guilty to the murder of someone literally almost, I think it was like 25 or 27 years ago, because of the 23andMe data. Now, most of us don't have that risk, right? Like we don't have the risk of something like that being surfaced. However, there has been a lot of questions. I don't know who owns the 23andMe data now, but there have been a lot of questions around, for example, if healthcare providers had access to your DNA and understood that you had pre-existing conditions that were prevalent in your DNA, could they charge you more from the beginning? And so I think it really does come down to your risk. It's the risk of your data. It's the risk of, if someone did find out that you were pregnant and had an abortion, it's the risk of are you a minority who's being targeted for something? Like, there's a lot of risk for different populations. And I think it's very different to ask that question to someone who has low risk than someone who might have high risk associated with it.
yeah, no,
no, completely.
it's a great point, Alex. Oriana, I'd love to hear like where are you taking this? Like what are your dreams? What are your visions? where are you taking this, and how can we get involved from a community standpoint, if we want to?
Totally. Well, thanks for kind of teeing me up. Yeah, so from the work that we did running a summit, which we then partnered with like Roche, which is a pharma company for, had outputs featured at the World Economic Forum, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, we got a really good feel for what the innovation landscape looks like in women's health. And the conclusion that we came to is that there's a lot more innovation and knowledge in women's health that exists that's just not being applied. It's not translating to patient care. So, talking about like women are 50% more likely to be misdiagnosed following a heart attack. We've had that knowledge since, the 80s about these differences, sex and gender differences in cardiovascular disease between men and women, but it's not translating. And so, yeah, we have this tool, which is specifically for employee benefits, called ORI. ORI stands for Outcomes, Research, and Innovation, and it centralizes existing knowledge and solutions in women's health to connect it to women based on their condition. And so to improve outcomes for female employees, give women those lost days of productivity and workplaces those lost days of productivity back, and to drive down costs. And yeah, that's the first step, and how we're going about it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I always, for whatever reason, right before we end, I always come up with one more question. So I apologize. Everyone on here knows that. How do we start to educate people younger on this? Is that another part of what you're thinking?
I think it's already started to change a lot. So
Has it? Okay.
I feel like kind of like a baby celebrity whenever I go to parties, because like everybody wants to talk about it and everybody has a story about women's health now, which is like not the case before. So I think that
Did
everybody
you just call yourself a baby celebrity?
Like a mini
no,
celebrity,
Oh, a
I'm
mini
I'm
celebrity.
not like
yeah.
like a small celebrity.
Yeah,
I
no.
love
Okay,
that.
I'm gonna that came out weird. So I kind of regret that, to be
That's gonna be
honest.
your story this weekend, that you called yourself a baby celebrity, right?
Yeah, I didn't mean it like that. I meant more like women's health. Like, okay, I
Yes.
just meant it's a lot more common in terms of conversation. Everybody comes up to you and wants to talk about it. So I think it's changed. Um, but yeah, I think that there always needs to be more conversation around this stuff. But I think like our generation knows about these topics because like older generations are now speaking out about it. So we kind of like know what to expect in a way.
No, that's
Yeah.
great. Heidi, yeah, these always fly back. These always fly by so fast. Sorry. So you have Oriana. Please connect with her on LinkedIn. She does a great job on there. You'll get a link to her website on there as well. Happy Mother's Day to everyone in the US this weekend. Alex, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you, Oriana, for doing this and for championing it and for continuing to fight the fight. We all appreciate it, and it's very necessary.
Thank you so much for having me. I really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
everyone. I hope you all have a great weekend and see you next week. And
So great to see everyone.
good luck, Jess, if you're listening. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.